Well, good morning. Thanks for joining me. Welcome to Cowboy Church, coming to you from the woods by the magic of virtual background. But just a picture I took last night out here on the ranch. Anyways, today starts the first day of my 66th trip around the sun, which is code for yesterday was my 65th birthday. And thanks for everybody who wished me well on my birthday. 65 is a big one. I don't think I have any more to look forward to as far as big ones. What I mean by big one is I got on Medicare this month, and which is a help and a blessing, I hope. And anyways, I want to borrow the words from a Jimmy Buffett song that it's called "Trip Around the Sun," and it kind of is a segue into this morning's message, even though I didn't plan it that way. It just happens to be where we are in the book of Ephesians. But the line of the song goes, I'm just hanging on while this old world is spinning. And it's good to know that it's out of my control. If there's one thing that I've learned from all this living, is that it wouldn't change a thing if I let go. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. What that, at least what that means to me. As we pick up our study in Ephesians. So before we do that, let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Father, we just want to know you better. We want to know ourselves better. We want to know how you made us and what your intentions were and how you want to relate to us. So we ask now that you bless us then with this teaching time and the learning time, that we can all learn together more about our relationship with you and our relationship with each other through you. We ask it in the name of your precious Son, Jesus, and for his glory. Amen. So, well, let me read these three verses, and I don't think we're going to be able to adequately cover all this today, quite frankly. But, we have to get started on it, so let's do that. And where we last left off, was in verse 16 of Ephesians chapter 4. And we finished that up, and we're going to make a little transition into the next section. And that is verses 17, 18, and 19 of Ephesians chapter 4. And I'll just read it to you, and then we'll start talking about that a little bit. In verse 17, it says, "This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness in their heart, who, being past feelings, have given themselves over to lasciviousness, to work all uncleanness with greediness." Okay, so let's pick this apart a little bit. Excuse my voice this morning. For some reason, I'm a little bit hoarse. And it wasn't because I partied too hardy on my birthday. I fully intended to party hardy on my birthday. It just didn't work out that way yesterday. Anyways, so in verse 17, it says, "This I say, therefore." So whenever you just use therefore, you have to stop and ask the question, well, what is that therefore? And what the therefore does is it connects to the previous topics. It's kind of like Paul saying, I had to tell you all that so I can tell you this. So this I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth, or another way of saying that, from now on, walk not as other Gentiles walk. I'll stop right there just to clarify. When he says as other Gentiles walk, he's let me get my hat on straight here. What he's saying, he's speaking to the audience here who was primarily in that region of the world, not of Jewish background. They were what the Jews would consider to be heathens, or maybe in some cases barbarians. They were the unwashed masses, so to speak, that that had no relationship with God until Paul came along and introduced them to Jesus. So what Paul's saying is that I'm speaking to believers, and now that you're believers, and we've discussed all the benefits that come with your faith in Christ and the fact that Christ has made you a new person, that you have to leave your former way of thinking, your former way of living, your former way of walking, navigating this life. I think that's the best way to describe when Paul's talking about walking is how do we navigate through life as believers? How do we navigate through this sick and dying world that's falling apart as believers? And he's saying you're sure not going to do it as the non-believers do, because they have no relationship with God whatsoever. So what they see naturally is the best that they're going to get, but we have something better. And he describes the real problem in the next sentence, where he says, walk not as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind. And I want to really key in on that word vanity today, because I think that it really gets us to the heart of the problem. And it gets us to the heart of the the problem of believers in particular not enjoying or experiencing the maximum benefit of our relationship to God through Christ because of this vanity in our mind. Now, when we use the word vanity, we often think of the vanity that's in our bathrooms. It's the place where we get ourselves presentable in the morning, where we shave and brush our teeth, and the gals put on their makeup and fix their hair. Fortunately for me, I don't have to fix my hair. It's really not a bad thing to not have to fix your hair, but that's another subject. But we think of it as the place that we determine, well, how do we look? How do we look? And certainly that is a definition of vanity, but there are other definitions of vanity that I think take us a little deeper. And in this case, I'm just going to submit to you that the definition of vanity is the vanity of your mind, in particular, is to be empty, an empty mind. Or in Paul's usage here, what he's really just saying is don't be a spiritual airhead. And there are so many of us Christians that are walking around as spiritual airheads, and our understanding is, as Paul is going to say, darkened or clouded, because we're in this condition of being a spiritual airhead. And so with that in mind, I want to go to the Old Testament. We're going to go back about over 1,000 years and visit with King Solomon in the book, one of the books he wrote of the Old Testament, called or titled Ecclesiastes. And just to give you some backstory on Ecclesiastes, it was written, as I said, by Solomon, and around the 10th century BC. So this is perhaps 1,000 to 1,100 years before Paul wrote to the Ephesians. And the theme of the book, according to the editors here, the experts, the theologians, is man's reasoning. So we're going to try to make a connection here between man's reasoning and vanity, or being spiritually an airhead. Okay, so where I'm going to just kind of jump to the conclusion and then come back and support my reasons for making this conclusion is that when Paul's talking about walking according to the vanity of our mind and having our understanding darkened, he's really talking about walking according to man's reasoning. So to give you a little backstory, and I'm going to read a long passage if I can get through it with my hoarse voice this morning, about King Solomon's own testimony. Now, King Solomon was the son of King David, the famous David from the Bible. And King Solomon was quite famous himself because if you want to talk about a person who would be considered a winner in the world, a person that really had it all, it would be King Solomon. And I would submit that, adjusted for inflation, that he might be the richest man that ever lived. In fact, they're still looking for King Solomon's treasures, King Solomon's golds, the origin of King Solomon's mines. But this King Solomon was the king of Israel. And he was not the kind of king that ruled by oppression. He was not a dictator. The people of Israel loved him because he, under his kingship, they lived quite well. He built numerous public works, for example, aqueducts, water channeling systems. He built a magnificent temple for them to worship on the hill in downtown Israel. He was one of these guys that whatever he did just worked out. He had the Midas touch. It turned to gold. He was extremely well educated. He was apparently a very good teacher. In fact, he had the role of, refers to himself as a preacher. He was accomplished in the arts. He was a big patron of the arts and music. And everything he did, we're going to read by his testimony, everything he did worked out. This guy had it all. And if there's anybody that you say, well, I'd like to trade places with, it would be old King Solomon. But we're going to read from his testimony that he reached a conclusion that initially is going to be quite depressing to us. And if we put ourselves, contrast ourselves to what he's saying, we might reach a quite depressing conclusion. And don't for a minute, I'm not getting gloomy here about my birthday, okay? I'm not depressed about my birthday at all. But let's just read in here, and then I may stop and pause, and let's go a little ways into it. I'm going to take a drink of coffee. You can too. Got my dad cup here. So Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. I paused there because another thought came to my mind. Many of us, when we were in college or in English literature class somewhere, had to read a book by Ernest Hemingway called The Sun Also Rises. And it takes place in the 1920s after the First World War, where this group of young, in their 20s, Americans, perhaps as many as 200,000 young Americans, were living in Paris because they were disillusioned after the war. And there was a young artsy group that Hemingway hung out with in his 20s, and he wrote a book about their experiences. Another author named Gertrude Stein coined that group of young American expatriates as the lost generation. And it's amazing that Hemingway captured the very essence of, I think, of what we're about to read here. And he even referenced it in the opening of his book about vanity, emptiness. And what we're going to read is spiritual airheadedness, but he captured the essence of people without direction, without purpose, and being dissatisfied with life. So again, having said that, we'll read. So the words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens unto its place where it rose. The wind goeth toward the south, then turneth about to the north, and whirleth about continually. And the wind returneth again according to its circuits. All the rivers run to the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers can't come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. The thing which hath been, and the thing that shall be, and the thing which is done, is which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything wherein a man may be said, see, this is new? It has already been of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Next section, verse 12 says, I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I gave my heart to seek and to search out wisdom concerning all things which are done under heaven. This severe travail hath God given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is lacking cannot be numbered. I spoke to my own heart, saying, lo, I am come to great estate, and I have gotten more wisdom than they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive this also is vexation of spirit. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increases knowledge increases sorrow. When he uses the word vexation of spirit, it's another way of saying it's frustrating. It's frustrating. The more wisdom I get, the more frustrated I am. I said in my heart, this is chapter 2, verse 1, I said in my heart, come now, I will test thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasures, and behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in my heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting myself, glasses aren't so good. I think I need a stronger pair. I guess probably comes with being 65. I'm struggling a little bit with these. I sought in my heart to give myself unto wine, to acquaint my heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what good there is for the sons of men, which they should do under heaven all the days of their life. I made for myself great works. I built houses and planted vineyards. I made gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruits. I made pools of water to water wherewith the wood that brings forth trees. I got servants and maidens, and had servants board in my house, and had great possessions, and herds of flocks, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered also silver and gold, and particular treasures of kings of the provinces. And I got men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men, musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem, and my wisdom remained with me. And whatsoever my eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all of my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked at the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor which I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. And I turned myself to behold wisdom and madness and folly. For what can a man do that cometh after a king? Even that which he hath already done. Then I saw wisdom exceedeth folly, as far as light exceedeth darkness. A man's eyes are in his head, but a fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happens to them all. Then I said in my heart, as it happened to the fool, it also happened to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that is also vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. Seeing that which I now in these days come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man? Like the fool. I'm going to pause right there. So he's reviewing everything he's done to try to get satisfaction out of this life. And sadly for him, everything he set out to do, he accomplished and excelled at. He built houses and vineyards, pools of water to water such, great public works. He was a patron of the arts and of music. He was wise. Everything he did. He was educated. This man was a rock star. Yet in the next verse, he makes a very sad statement. Verse 17. Therefore, I hated life, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. For all is vanity and vexation of spirit. When a man tells you he hates life, he's suicidal. He says, all is vanity, all is empty. I'm just empty. I'm not satisfied. And my spirit is frustrated. So I would encourage you to go back and read that again, not to get in a blue mood, but to read through to the end of the book. We don't have time to do that today. I don't have the voice to do it, or the right glasses to do it. So I would encourage you. It does have a happy ending, or it does reach the right conclusion. King Solomon doesn't commit suicide, but it kind of reminds me of the stories you hear about these people that win these huge lottery payouts, and they, in the end, say, I wish I'd never done it. people who win what we would call life-changing money. And their life changes, all right, but it changes for the worse. Some of us say, well, I'd like to at least try. Well, Solomon tried and he won. In fact, he did it the hard way. You would think that he would have a sense of self-satisfaction. But he said, no, it's all emptiness. It's all vanity. It's a chasing after the wind. All the rivers run to the sea, but the sea's not full. It's never enough. The sun rises, the sun sets. The world keeps on spinning. And we really have no control over it whatsoever. He reaches a conclusion, he'll say later that let me see if I can track it down for you real quick. Verse 24, he says this a couple of times. He says, there is nothing better for a man that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This I saw also, that it was from the hand of God. I think what he's trying to tell us is that certainly we have physical needs. We need to eat and drink. And we're going to have to work to provide food for ourselves. But he's also saying that the labor in itself is to be enjoyed. It's not a means to an end. It's not, the labor isn't a way to get wealthy enough so that you can kick back, do nothing. So many people, they, as the English say, live their lives in quiet desperation, looking for a better day or a time when they've made it and kick back. But they don't enjoy the ride. What Solomon's saying here is that we need to enjoy the ride, the labor, the day-to-day. Make every day a joy. You have enough to eat, you have enough to drink. Well, how do we make every day a joy? The work itself becomes the joy. And he says, this I saw is from the hand of God. It's a gift of God. And I remember at the turn of the millennium, 23 plus years ago now, I was listening to the radio and they were doing a countdown of the top 100 songs of the last 100 years. And the number one song, according to this countdown, was the Rolling Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Now, it did have a terrific guitar riff in there. But the words of the song, if you listen to it, is like this guy's trying to do everything to be satisfied. And he's listening to what the world's telling me. I gotta wear the right shirt. I gotta smoke the right cigarettes. He's describing the current situation of what we would call living in the American dream. And we look to all these celebrities who have made it, who got it all these rich folks, and we think, man, that's what it takes to be happy. That's what it takes to have joy into our day-to-day life. And it's a lie. It's a lie from the pits of hell. Solomon figured it out. And what Paul's encouraging us in Ephesians is that we don't have to live that way, walking as other Gentiles walk in the vanity and the emptiness of their own thinking, walking around believing a lie of what it's going to take to give us joy, to make us happy. And then he goes on to say, we probably need to follow up on these verses, that this is where it takes you. It takes you to what Solomon says, I gave myself to much wine. Not that drinking was a sin. He's saying I was trying to take an edge off my feelings, an edge off my despondency, my edge off my frustration, edge off my despair. By drinking much wine. It's the same thing Paul says, and I'll read it because I don't want you to get the wrong impression about what he's talking about here. We're going to have to pick it up again next week. We're running out of time, but let me go back to Ephesians chapter 4 quickly here. It says, verse 19, it says, who being past feeling. In other words, their feelings are overwhelming them, have given themselves over to lasciviousness. That's a fancy word. You can look it up, Google it. Lasciviousness basically means doing whatever it takes to take the edge off your feelings, at least for a little bit. All right, so we're not going to be gloomy. We're going to look at this with our eyes wide open and our hearts wide open, because that's what Paul is telling us to do. Look at this with your heart wide open and be honest. So I'll let you think about that till next week. Until then, adios. Have a great day. Try to stay cool somewhere. God bless, and you'll see me later, God willing, if I make it through this whole trip around the sun. Bye-bye.